Hi and welcome to Gardening with DC. In today's Seed Series video, we're here again in the Hunter Valley with winemaker extraordinaire Richie Doan from Bim Badgin, and we're going to have a quick chat about beneficial insects. So Rich, let's start off and just try and define that term. So beneficial insect, what is a beneficial insect?
I guess for us here, it's a beneficial insect is all about something that creates balance out in that ecosystem. So there's lots of insects, lots of living organisms, if you like, that are in there. So a beneficial insect for us is something that's going to create balance.
Okay, so really encouraging biodiversity. Now, often nowadays, when beneficial insects, when it gets used as a term, certainly in our sort of a gardening environment, it's sort of a bit less biodiversity, but that's playing a really big role. It's about insects that are parasitic or predatory on other insects, basically, and those other insects, they're sort of being viewed as being a little bit villainous because they are generally sort of sap-sucking and attacking our plants. Now I think as we progress through this, so if we sort of start off predatory, parasitic, when we come to the end, we'll realise that actually biodiversity, which is where you're starting from, Rich, is sort of our end point on this as well. So so a few examples that we use sort of as a gardener. So obviously ladybirds are a sort of a classic example. That's something that you encourage here as well.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a huge one for us. Ladybirds. Yeah.
So on the parasitic side, we've got parasitic wasps. If you've seen any sort of David Attenborough shows and you've seen parasitic wasps, they're a little bit stomach churning, but they do play a very, very important role. But other sort of classic things are lacewings, following on sort of good gardening methodology. If you see a lacewing, you'll notice its wings are very lacy. So as with all of those things, it's sort of simple naming conventions. Hoverflies are another very common one. And also mantips or mantises, which prey on everything actually. So there's lots of different insects there in there. Rich, what are some of the ways that you try and have seen people trying to encourage these sort of insects versus our sap-sucking insects into, whether it's the vineyards or people's gardens? What are some of the ways that you've seen?
Yeah, well, it's very much about habitat.
Yep.
Habitat is everything to create this balance or get these insects into the vineyard or to your garden at home. So we use a lot of things like hedgerows, planting native species throughout our properties to encourage those insects to come. Really anything that you can do at home that is quite simple. Have a water source for them to be able to stay alive. It's very easy, very minimal approach, but it does create beautiful biodiversity and balance at home.
Yeah. So just genuinely touching on that biodiversity point, when I drove up here this morning, I turned off the freeway. Just wanted to stretch my legs a bit. I had quite a busy work day yesterday, so I was a bit stiff and sore. Just wanted to stretch my legs a bit, and I got out of the ute, and the first thing that I saw was a fairy wren. Now, it's pretty rare that we see those in the suburbs, and I think part of the rarity of seeing those in the suburbs is that we don't have sufficient biodiversity to be encouraging them into the garden. So let's maybe just touch on maybe some of those smaller birds. I know they're not a friend for fruit. If you are a fruit gardener, you probably net and whatever else, so they're not a friend here. But how can they help out in terms of, perhaps after moths and that sort of thing, other flying insects on the wing? We should maybe be encouraging them in our suburban gardens, Rich.
You should very much encourage them at home. They do, I guess, nibble on and alleviate issues from other things, i.e. moths, all these things that do nibble on your leaves and your foliage at home. In the vineyard as such, we don't love the little birds because they do eat all our fruit, so we try to attract the bigger birds. But they're very handy to alleviate those issues, to eating moths and a few other things as well.
The other one that I was just going to touch upon as well, because a lot of people have, and obviously I'm British, so in theory I should have this fear, but slightly fearful of spiders and other things. So we didn't mention them in those first ones, but spiders can be a very, very useful animal in your garden in terms of spinning webs and capturing. Now again, they're not sort of targeting specific, so they're potentially going to get lacewings and hoverflies and whatever else as well. But spiders, having spiders in your garden is incredibly important. One of my absolute pet hates, I must confess, is people that have an insect spray or a pest spray of their house, and then extend that out into the garden. If you want to keep sort of webbing spiders away, etc., from your house, on the eaves, okay, no worries, but try not to extend that out into the garden, because that then creates a bit of a collapse of spiders, which can be really, really important for their stuff.
Yeah, you need the spiders out there. Very detrimental if you get rid of all of them. They do catch the good insects as well.
They're not targeted,
but they do create and keep this balance that we love throughout that insectarium, if you like.
And then just sort of wrapping up, Rich. So sort of habitat biodiversity.
Yep.
In terms of plants, all about the flowers, all about the nectar, cornflowers, this sort of stuff. Are there any particular flowers that, or natives as well, that you particularly encourage or have seen work really well here in the Hunter?
One that works very well for us that isn't necessarily a big one is lavender. Lavender is a huge one in your garden at home, which is very easy to attract bees as well. But we also have lavender scattered throughout our properties to attract the bees. There are others that are a little bit harder to put at home because they do grow a little bit large and things, but your native trees, eucalyptus, there's lots. But for us, the smaller, or for you at home, the smaller plants that are easy to allow the bees to chew on would be the easiest.
Yeah. So if you want to be encouraging, it's annual flowers, really, really, really important. Now, just one last final thing, Rich.
Yep.
So here we are in wine country, and I think it's really wine country all around the world that we see rose shrubs at the end of rows of vines. What's going on there? Are we attracting beneficial insects there, Rich? What's the purpose of all those rose shrubs?
Yeah, look, to a certain extent they will be attracting some beneficial insects for sure, but they are acting as a canary for us. So yes, there's aesthetics that are also attached to it to make the end rose look lovely. A post sometimes doesn't look that pretty, but for us it is this canary role. So the rose acts as a plant that will essentially get the disease or something that we don't want to get into the vine first. So we will notice it, and then we go through our vines and check them and make sure there's nothing there, or we get out and put some sort of program in place to alleviate those issues out there. So yeah, the rose is very important. It looks good, does attract insects, but also allows us to get ahead of the game.
Okay, so there you go. A rose is a canary. Okay, so that's it for gardening with DC on beneficial insects. Richie Doan, thanks for your expertise
Pleasure.
and time, and see you next time.